Okay, recording has started. And auto transcription has started. Okay. You can see participants still coming into the room. So I will welcome those of you that are here. I'm just going to wait just a moment for those numbers to slow down just a touch. All right, looks like a good time to start. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending. We so appreciate seeing everyone coming into the webinar this afternoon. This webinar covers the service implementation plan, and we are hoping that we are seeing many providers on this call, and that this topic will be especially helpful for those of you that are creating service implementation plans. If you are not a provider, for example, you're a case manager or another state worker who's here to listen, please keep that in mind that this training is directed at those providers. So some housekeeping. This meeting is being recorded. We will have some recordings of these sessions, the residential and non-residential, available on our website for you to review at a later date, as well as accompanying materials so that you can review the PowerPoint and all of the great examples that we have for you. As attendees, you are all muted upon entering. However, you should be able to access your audio settings if you need to change your output speakers. Please use the Q&A box to submit any questions or issues that you are having. And we will do our best at the end to address some of those questions or change our presentation as we go to address some of those questions. If you would like to access the live transcript or the closed captions that has been activated, you can activate that using the live transcript button in your Zoom controls. At the end of the session today, there will be a poll that we are using to help us with determining next steps in training. So I hope that you stay on board to at least answer that poll for us so we can help us figure out what is needed by the folks in the field. We want to do, what is needed instead of just trying to guess. So thank you again for attending. My name is Marina Whalen. I'm the training coordinator. If you run into any issues today on the Zoom, feel free to send me an email or put something in the Q&A and alert me that there is something going on. And of course, we do have our person-centered planning mailbox where you can submit questions. That email link is in this presentation as well. Today's agenda. First, we're going to do a little bit of background revisiting the last session. The recording from the last session that we held in August is available on our website. So if you'd like to revisit that material in full, that is available to you. We'll talk about reviewing the PCP to pull out relevant service information, as well as proposing services based on goals, and then take a look at the SIP form and talk about how to complete that and some tips for writing the narrative, some best case tips. We have a couple of great speakers today, as well as some support staff on hand to help manage the Q&A. So I'd like to welcome Lisa Sturdivant and Donna Benson, who will be presenting the materials this morning. So thank you again for attending, and I'll be back in touch at the end for the poll.
So glad to have everybody here with us to talk about the service implementation plan. Just want to start with reminding people, we talked about this back in the last training about why the changes were made in June to the person-centered planning process in Maine. So we work together with individuals and families, people who receive services, self-advocates, our super group, and others to hear how person-centered planning was working for them. And so with guidance from them and support, we've also heard from our community membership reform group, which was formed and met over the course of a year. It's made up of individuals with disabilities, family members, advocates, providers, and state staff who came together for a year And part of what they looked at in terms of recommendations to ODES and DHHS was the person-centered planning process, again, incorporating feedback from self-advocates and other individuals on a larger scale. Maine also has an agreement with the Department of Justice regarding a settlement as how person-centered planning is done in Maine, who's involved, and who's creating the plan. And then the last two big things that sort of came together to help us with this change were the home and community-based settings federal rule, the 2014 rule, and Maine's HCBS global rule, which states in it the person-centered planning federal guidelines and requirements that the state must be in compliance with immediately. So again, all of these things coming together for the changes that occurred in June. As we think about the changes, we know that there are lots of factors that feed into looking at person-centered planning. As a state, we're responsible to think about these things. So Olmsted and people having the right to have services and supports to be in the community versus an institution. The home and community-based settings rule, the federal rule, which states that all waiver settings must be integrated and support full access to community, including seeking access to employment, engaging in community life, control over personal resources, and being able to be in community at the same level anybody else is. Again, we have our Department of Justice and also the ADA, all of this coming together to help us strengthen and reformat our person-centered planning process to be in alignment with both federal and state requirements. So what is the service implementation plan? So the service implementation plan is part of what's new since June and part of what we know needed to happen in terms of helping individuals to understand the services that they get and how providers in settings are supporting them to meet their goals. So again, it documents service delivery strategies, how your staff will support somebody in that setting. So whether it's a community support, community membership, work support, career planning, any of the non-residential services, even residential, how your services will help them support their goals. It includes timeframes and agreed upon supports. We're working to implement SMART goals with case managers, with individuals we serve as a recommendation from self-advocates that goals weren't always being met or being reviewed or something that they felt that they had an investment in. So again, as we relook at some of this work, it also addresses related needs and risk factors. It always, like any person-centered planning, needs to be clear to the person. In this case, the service implementation plan helps the person, their guardian, their family, the people that care deeply about them to understand how services in a setting will support them in meeting their goals and what they want in life. So again, just a little bit about the SIP. Who completes the service implementation plan in the enterprise information system? The service provider, so not the case manager. So this is the role of every service provider, and we're going to talk about who those service providers are in a second. But after reviewing the person-centered plan, spending time understanding who that person is, their strengths, their goals, their desires, their needs, the risks that are in their life, the health factors, all of that. The provider of service is responsible to complete or develop in EIS the SIP. And that could be the service provider itself. In shared living, it could be the oversight agency in conjunction with the shared living provider. So they need to know what that looks like and the individual. And also in self-directed services, it also could be the support broker. Again, it's not the case manager, it's one of these other entities. So a person on the waiver could have multiple service implementation plans, depending upon the number of waiver services and providers they have or are requesting if it's a new service. So the services that require a service implementation plan: home support, shared living, community support, work or employment specialist services, career planning, and community membership. All of those waiver services require an individualized service implementation plan, again, completed by either the provider, the oversight agency if it's shared living, or the support broker if it's a self-directed service. So the case manager or care coordinator is going to work with the person in their circle of support. And that circle of support is who the person wants it to be. It can be family, it could be friends, it could be people from their life that are important to them. But they're the ones that work to develop the person-centered plan. And this may be a little bit of a change for some of our providers to think about. So you may or may not be at the person-centered planning meeting. It really depends. But that individualized person-centered plan will now include goals and services. So amount, frequency, and duration of services will get developed as part of work with the case manager, the individual, and the person-centered planning team. It is not, so it's dependent upon the individual, again, their needs, but is developed outside of the service implementation plan. So the service implementation plan is developed by waiver providers of that specific service after a PCP has happened. So the PCP and all of the things that go into that, getting to know the individual, spending time in discovery, maybe learning about them through using some of the Charting the Life course tools we're going to talk about. However, that case manager or care coordinator has gathered information and worked with the individual and those who care about them to develop the person-centered plan. In there, it will have all the information that's needed, or some of the information that's needed, to develop the service implementation plan. So the SIPs are used and developed in EIS for sections 18, 21, and 29. For section 20 right now, we continue to use a paper process. So again, as providers of service, and especially as non-residential providers of service here this afternoon, just want to remind you how you go about developing your service implementation plan. The first thing is you have to have access to EIS. So if this person is new to you, or this person is somebody who you've been asked to develop a SIP for, you need access to their record in EIS. So you'd be working with the case manager to ensure you have access if you don't. Once you have access and you go in and you anchor on the individual, you're going to go and read the person-centered plan. So you still have access to the person-centered plan. The difference here is that you'll be creating the SIP outside of the PCP. So again, as part of our agreement, the person-centered plan itself is developed with the case manager, with the individual. The scope, duration, and frequency of services are done prior to the SIP being developed. So when you look at the person-centered plan, we ask you to look at things like life outcomes, their goals, their preferences, any community interests that may have been discovered. If there's an employment goal or an employment interest, preferred communication and learning styles, feel free to ask the case manager if there's any discovery documents that they did, if there's a relationship map or other things that may live outside of the PCP that would be helpful for you as you develop the service implementation plan. We ask you as a provider of service to look at what you've been asked. So after reading that PCP, is there your ability to provide the full array of services that the person, number of hours, scope, and frequency, or are you able to partially meet that? So sometimes people request maybe 5 days a week of service, and a provider can't provide that at this opportunity, but they could provide 3 days a week. So there may be multiple providers of one service, like community support or even employment services. So again, when you're starting to develop the service implementation plan, be looking at that PCP, be looking at that information, be looking at what the scope and duration and frequency of the service has been identified as, and can you as a provider meet that need? Complete the service implementation plan with input and discussion of the person and the case manager and care coordinator. So again, we ask you, I'm going to show you some examples to really, if you don't know this person, or even if you do, the service implementation plan is how services are going to help the person to meet their goals and outcomes of their life. So as we, again, think about goals, we're going to ask you to think about how your part of services, community supports, community membership, work support, will work to help that person towards the goal that's already identified now in the new person-centered plan. So if the services or goals change, there may be a need to revise that service implementation plan. So there may be times where a case manager reaches back out to you, ask you to go into EIS and make an update to a service implementation plan, or somebody's had a major life change and the PCP needs to be changed and the service implementation plan needs to be changed. Somebody may meet a goal and they want to work on the next phase. We may need to change a service implementation plan. So again, be coordinating with the case manager or care coordinator as it relates to the service implementation plan. So as you start to develop service implementation plans, we ask that you submit them within 10 business days. So that's 10 business days, or as an agreed upon with the member. So for new referrals for services, so somebody brand new to your setting, to your agency, we ask that you, once somebody has reached out to you and asked you to complete the service implementation plan, that you do so within 10 business days. So that's different than what we used to do. We used to do them as part of person-centered planning. Now they're coming after the person-centered plan. It's about implementation of service. If there's a continuing waiver service, you may be asked to do that, and that's usually at annual person-centered plans. If there's a revision to the PCP for a major life change, a change in home, a death in the family that affects the individual, a new job, those major life events that require a revision to the PCP may require a change to the SIP. Revising the SIP and action steps or tasks, again, all of it within 10 days of being asked as a provider. So we ask after the SIP is completed, it gets, for you to understand, it gets reviewed and approved by the member and the case manager and care coordinator before it is finalized. And the person-centered plan and the SIP must be finalized. And there's a checkbox, and we'll show you how you would know that it is final before services are authorized or started. So again, hopefully this work, if it's somebody who's getting annual services, happens before, the new services are in place before the old services end, so there's no lag. For new people, there may be, this process for person-centered planning, development of the SIP, the locking of the SIP, the authorization of services with a start date. So that may take a little bit of time. There's no, usually we say when resource coordinators have all the information they need, they can authorize services within 30 days, sometimes quicker. Again, the case manager is responsible to ensure that those services are happening as they should. Miranda has put together for us to remind you, we have many new resources on our website. So we already have a person-centered planning process overview training for waiver providers. So if you are providing person-centered planning, if you are new or you have new staff, or you think about a staff meeting, covering that, watching that YouTube video together, talking about person-centered planning, so we request that you do anyway. There's an overview of the person-centered planning process PowerPoint, and there's also the service implementation plan training we did last month, a YouTube video. There's also a plan that you can download, a PDF format, so you can print if you're like some of us who like a printed copy to be able to see. And again, how to add and update a SIP in EIS are screenshots, step by step, of the process to either add or update a service implementation plan. All of those things are currently on our website and available for you. So before we sort of move into what is in the service implementation plan, again, remind you that the service implementation plan flows from the person-centered plan. And as we think about person-centered planning, we have gone back to the roots of good person-centered planning, and we'll be using Charting the Life course as we move forward and hoping to enhance, again, how we learn about people, how we plan with people, and how we support people to be active members of community. So you'll see in the PCP that we've aligned some of the new dimensions within it with some of the Charting the Life course. So what do people admire and like about me? Who are the important people in my life? The best ways to communicate with me? The technology I currently use? The best ways to support me? How not to support me? And then a section to help people think about goals. This is the life I have now, and this is the life I may want, and this is what I want to be different in my life. So as we, again, have shifted our way of thinking about person-centered planning and strengthened it and made it more focused on the individual and lifelong goals and helping them to reach maybe towards other things that they desire, that they want in their lives. With that, how we capture it in EIS has also changed. As we mentioned, Maine has decided, together with self-advocates and families and others, that we are embracing and using the framework of Charting the Life course. So if you, as a provider, haven't had an opportunity, you can go to our website and see all of the new Charting the Life course tools, videos, training, and opportunity for you and your staff to learn about good person-centered planning. So you'll see here that Maine has chosen to have 8 domains. So these are the 8 services, these are the 8 areas of somebody's life that we can plan around. And again, case managers are responsible to utilize good tools, good discovery, and good planning with people to help them think through these life domains. So each one of these on our website, you can click on it and it comes up with a planning document that case managers can use. But I also suggest that providers look at these if you haven't, talk through them with your agency and think about some of the things here. So you'll see in the employment one, great questions about employment for somebody who's not working and for somebody who's working. So as a case manager, I'll be having conversations about employment, but also as a provider, you now have a requirement, right? Even in a day program, even in shared living, to be helping people to think about employment. So we've aligned these domains, these questions, these tools with HCBS in Maine, with some of the remediation you've already been doing. So again, employment, community engagement, communication and advocacy, home and housing, lifelong learning, social and relationships, health and wellness, and safety and security. So these planning domains are now on our website with all the information. So what is it that somebody wants in their life? How do we help them to use services to meet some of the goals that they have? So again, there's on our website all sorts of new person-centered planning resources, tools, and documents. So when we think about the person-centered plan in EIS, when you look at it, you'll see there are sections. So there's a goal description with a target date. And again, case managers are now responsible, care coordinators, to help people to develop goals. Hopefully, we all get stronger in helping people to raise expectations around goals, about what is possible, about what I might want to do in my life, about what I can do. And with that, when do I want to do it by? There's a chance to identify strengths for people and also barriers and help people to figure out how do we help you around that barrier. Not just that it's a barrier, but how can we help you to address that barrier? There's an option for some risk description. So for some people we support, we know that there are plenty of risks in life, and so a plan to address those risks are required under person-centered planning, both federal and state rule. And that backup plan to those risks if something is to happen. What community and natural supports are in somebody's life? This is an opportunity for us to do community mapping, relationship mapping, identify people, spend time connecting using Dr. Angela Amato's tools for helping people to form relationships with others. So again, there's a part in person-centered planning that is now focused on those supports that we can help people to build their own circles of support. What non-waiver services are people accessing? So people might be accessing vocational rehabilitation. They might be accessing a career center, or they might be accessing a food bank in their community. What else are they connected to in terms of services and support? There are plenty of things in communities outside of waiver services. So where else can they get support and services? They may be getting housing, LIHEAP assistance. They may be getting other things. So what types of non-waiver services are people accessing, and what does that look like? So you find some of that information. And then again, as we look to goals changing and helping people to think about bigger goals, life goals, long-term goals, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years or out, and then how do we help them to take a step towards that goal? What are those milestones? What are those steps that we're going to help somebody to take? Who's responsible? Who's going to help? And what is potentially a start date or a targeted end date? So all of that now is part of the person-centered plan. So a little bit different in the sense of providers now are seeing a goal that's been already developed and being asked to take that goal, work with the person, and think about implementation of services to meet the goal. So what is a goal? Again, as we've been working for years with people to reach the goals that they want in life, we reflect back on that the goal should really be something that gives meaning to a person's life. And sometimes there are just things that people want or need, and they're not necessarily a goal. We're just going to help them to do this. But there's also these bigger things. So things like someday I want to be able to live in my own apartment. I'd like to be able to get married someday. Or I want a job down the road, I'm just not sure. Or I really want to go back to school, or I want to move, whatever that is for the person, helping to think about that goal. So having conversations with people about what's possible, learning about what's possible, sharing other stories of success for people with intellectual disabilities, to see what other people have done with their lives, helping to raise expectations is all the work that we do with individuals, families, with case managers, with all of us. A goal should be something that you can see it when it happens, you can celebrate it that it happened. And it's important to the person, right? This is something I really want in my life. And there's always a balance between that detail and open-endedness. We are starting to focus on SMART goals. So SMART goals are specific or observable, measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. And this actually was a request from our self-advocates in Maine saying that, again, sometimes goals just don't feel like I'm meeting them, or they're not big enough, or I'm not really clear. We're really trying to help case managers, care coordinators, and the people that they're supporting think about what are those big goals that you have in your life? What do you want to accomplish? How can we help you to get there? So as we get better, we'll all get some more use out of developing SMART goals for ourselves, for others that we're supporting. And you may see SMART goals coming to you as part of person-centered planning and be thinking about how you then help to implement those SMART goals. So we ask, when you look at the person-centered plan, you think about goal implementation. So again, with this change in June, providers are not developing goals with individuals. Goals are already developed, they're in the PCP, and you grab those goals and the goal number and you feed them into the SIP. And then that's what you're helping to implement. And so ask clarifying questions if you don't understand. So an example of a goal that that a community support program asked me about was, it said, the goal that they're working is, I want to get a job. And they said, but we don't do job development. And so what I said is, but there are a lot of things you can do to help somebody get a job. You can help them with Job Club. You can help them get a state ID. You can help them to practice interview skills. They can volunteer in your community support. You have a role in helping them. It may not be getting that job, or it could be, I'm going to provide career planning. That's a step in the process. That's an action towards getting that job. So request to sit with that person and be part of the SIP development. Meet with them, talk about them. Did you have some ideas of how this is going to happen? How can we help you to meet this goal? Use good questions. I think all of us know that we need to do a better job asking open-ended questions, having a conversation, and really listening. I again think that we can all just continue to think about, how do we help people to think about what's possible, what do they want in their lives, and then how can we help you to get there? You can't change people's goals, but you can discuss it with the waiver member. Geez, I see you've got this goal. I don't really understand, or I'd like to talk to you more about it, or talk to the case manager. Maybe we can talk about it together, or ask the case manager, is there any other information that isn't here that I need to help implement this goal? Again, the goal should identify the what, the how, right? It's going to happen. That's the service implementation plan. I mean, the goal may describe a want or a need, and that want or need could be supported by several services. So for example, if I say, I want to get a job in the next year, then maybe at home, I'm having some new responsibilities to build my skills, and I'm going to learn how to, I don't know, run the washing machine, or I'm going to learn how to mow the lawn, or whatever it is, to build my skills and my competence, my social skills, all of the things that I can work on at home to help me be better as an employee. But then in a day program, maybe it is, I'm going to attend a job club, I'm going to get help going to benefit counseling, or I'm going to, through career planning, get access to individualized discovery. So those three services could be working on the same goal differently, but connected, all of them helping people with the action to that goal. So again, it does not have to be connected to a single service. It could be attached to multiple services. So not every service is working on every goal. So there are multiple goals in the PCP, you'll see that. And you don't have to be working on all of them. So if I'm a community support provider, maybe it's just one of those goals I'm working for. You can provide services that are service-oriented, connecting people to community, building relationships, all of those things, financial, increasing my financial independence, all of the things that are HCBS, you can be working on without a goal attached to it. Those are services that the provider in the setting offers and provides to the individual. They don't have to be connected back to a goal. So there could be just one goal and one way to work on that, and then there's other things that people will be doing in terms of just services, receiving services. So some goals may be building goals we talk about. They're not necessarily, it's that long-term goal. I want to go back to school and get my associate's degree at the Southern Maine Community College in culinary arts. There might be multiple steps I need to get there. So I maybe need to first finish my GED, and I'm going to get help with that from my shared living provider by helping me to take an online class at nights or on weekends. Whatever that is, again, those are good conversations to have. So ask people, where do you want to start? And what do you want to start with first? How do we start? Where do you want to start? Especially when it's a long-term goal.
when you are developing the step with the person, there's some things we really want you to think about, and work toward making sure that that they meet. For example, when you write the SIP, the person you're supporting needs to understand everything in that SIP and what it means. So it needs to be written in language that they understand, and so that it's clear to them and to anyone reading that plan what exactly staff are going to be doing to, with, and for the person, and the activities the person has chosen. You're going to identify the person responsible for monitoring the plan. That might necessarily be a name at first, especially for proposing services. You might not have the staff ID'd yet, but it would be a program manager or a DSP, however your agency does that. You're going to demonstrate in writing that informed consent was given and how that was done. And you'll need to show that you are reviewing and updating the SIP at least once a year, or when the person has requested it to be updated, if there's changes in their life that are significant that require it to be changed, things like that. And then you're also going to include the purpose of support. There are drop-down menus on the SIP that you will choose to choose that purpose, and how, and that will reflect back on the goals and the activities and things within the PCP. Okay. The content of the SIP is it's an implementation plan. So you're going to tell us how your agency is going to implement services to meet the person's choice of settings, of activities, and of the goals they want to work on. You're going to indicate what your staff are going to do to, with, and for the person in specific and measurable actions. Your daily documentation should be aligning with the PCP and the SIP, and we'll talk in a little bit about some tools that can help you with that. And at a very minimum, that you need to make sure that the HCBS global rule tenets are being adhered to, and that the services meet those requirements. Again, when you're writing a narrative, you need to use language so that if you are reading it aloud to the person or anyone on their support team, or if they are reading it themselves, that they understand what the words mean, that they understand what the entire content together means, that it describes what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, where it's going to happen, and which staff are going to be around to support the person in these activities. You're going to, document who met and when, what happened last year, how that is informing the plan for this year, or what the person wants their plan to be this year. Some other tips are connecting the narrative to the above services from the PCP. If somebody says, and in this example, they're interested in learning about photography, community support, and personal development, that's a great domain for that to meet. So while we give you all these, the global rule and things, this has to meet at the same time, it needs to be individualized. Again, going back to the plan, what do they want? What does the person want for services? Where do they want to receive services? What activities do they want to do? And develop a service plan or an implementation plan that focuses on the person and what they want their services to look like. Okay. Goals don't have to be worked on every day or all the time, in every setting. It's not a checkbox, it's a process. It's person driven. So this is a process that just continues to evolve. Thank you. So going back to person-centered thinking skills, meet with the person, talk with them, ask them what they want, where they're going, what they want to work on, what goals they want to address in the services, and then create positive profiles. You can get information on that through the tools on our website, through information in the PCP, and then expect to have ongoing conversations. The DSPs that work with them, folks overseeing the DSPs, to talk to the person and really check in with them about, the services Are they meeting their goals? Are they meeting their expectations? Are they doing the activities they want? Do they feel that they're helping them move toward their goals? Back to the individual piece, you really need to learn about someone and focus on what they can bring into their community. What are their interests, what gifts, skills, strengths do they have? Which do they want to improve upon? Where are the places they like to go? Who do they like to see? Is there something they want to learn? Is there something they want to learn more about or become more deeply involved with? And then what is their valued role in their community or in a few of the settings that they really want to have an impact on? Again, the person has to drive the process so that while you have services and you're going to make sure that they meet the requirements, the SIP needs to be about implementing the service in the way that meets the member's needs and preferences in the settings that the member has chosen, all while meeting those requirements of HCBS. As much as possible, community settings need to be integrated in communities where people live and gather, and that they need to have opportunity to work on skills and develop, not job development, but developing themselves towards seeking employment in a competitive integrated setting, engagement in community life, controlling their resources, and receiving services and spending time in the community, just like folks who don't receive services do. HCBS rights, again, these are in the global rule. These are on a lot of different places, just making sure that you understand what the person's rights are and that they understand what their rights are and that they can use those to tell you what they want and that the services you're providing and the activities of the DSPs to support the member meet these rights. Another tool is the 5 Ballot Experiences by John O'Brien. Can help focus and guide staff in the work to understand what their role may be in supporting a person to grow in their relationships, be respected, how they want to contribute to their community, choices they make, and then just sharing ordinary places and activities that they want, where they want to be. There is a PCP instruction guide on our website, and these appendices indicate some person-centered thinking tools you may want to use. Feel free to go in and look at them. If you have questions about them, you can put it in the PCP email. But these are there for providers as well as case managers so that everyone is thinking about what the person wants, how those services should look, and how they should support the member's goals. Once you draft the SIP, you're going to want to review it with the person. Again, this is an ongoing process. There's a lot of checking in with the person. You can have it as a formal meeting. You can have it as an informal check-in. A person may come to you and say they want to talk about their SIP and they want to talk about what their, what their activities or something about their services. Sorry. If you were already providing services to someone and it's time to do an annual SIP and you've met with the person, developed which goals they want to work on, you may not have to have another meeting. So again, these aren't check boxes. We're not saying meet here, meet there. It's a process, it's a conversation, and it should be member driven. You're going to revise the SIP as goals and outcomes are met, or when the member requests it, or at the request of the case manager or care coordinator. You're going to provide ongoing monitoring and daily documentation. Again, that's coming up. And then you'll need to update the SIP to reflect changes in the PCP when required, when it affects the implementation, whether it's due to changes in the member's circumstance, functional status, or the person has requested it. Again, some more guidance on the website related to the documentation. We've got documentation guidance for residential and non-residential settings so that you can look in there. And I'm going to let Lisa talk a little bit more about this.
So just want to remind you, if you have not seen it, Just move right, Miranda, to the next slide, the non-residential guidance. There, we have taken the opportunity to create a form that you can use for daily documentation that aligns with HCBS. So remember, discovery, getting to know the person, all of the things that we talked about, the PCP, the service implementation plan, then ends in ensuring that you have daily documentation or documentation of services being implemented. If it is daily, if it's every other day, whatever that is. So together with TheraP, with our subject matter experts on HCBS, we developed a tool to help providers meet the documentation requirements. So again, that is on our website. If you haven't seen it, you don't have to have TheraP. You can use the paper version. If you do have TheraP, you can find it in the TheraP files that you access.
There we go. We're going to take a quick look at the SIP form itself. The previous slide, you'll get a copy of these. So the previous slide is a link to it as well, the PDF form. Please, as always, look at each box, look at the drop downs, choose the appropriate selection. And when you're talking about a provider, please use the agency name. If you want to add the program name on the end of it, that's fine. But also include the agency name there as provider. You're going to use these prompts in your narrative. You're going to talk about the purpose of the support, and then you're going to be documenting things about how you're supporting the member, their communication style, their learning style, what they want to do. Do they want to strengthen community involvement? Do they want to increase natural support relationships? What are those things? There's tons of prompts here. Use this and the just conversations you've had to really develop that narrative. Under the goal title, you'll put the goal title in there and choose the number. You're going to identify the role of the person who's going to help them achieve the outcome. And if it's not a DSP or program supervisor, who else is there in the program that's going to be helping them with that? Again, all drop-down boxes and text boxes are there for a reason. Please just fill everything out. Okay. How often the progress will be reviewed or tracked? How often does the person want to check in with you around their progress, and how often do they want to meet formally around that? And then again, making sure services are connected to the person's goals, strengths, preferences, support needs, health, safety, and functional needs, and the whole person, all of that. So again, you're going to be documenting the staff, how the staff's going to assist that. You're going to be documenting an implementation strategy around the activities and how they're supporting those things. Again, lots of questions. We don't need to look at all of them. The SIP the plan must be updated to reflect changes in the PCP at least annually, as we talked about. And then for those of you who were in the morning presentation, we've checked, and as a provider, once this is all done and the person has agreed to the SIP, the provider will check the box and lock the SIP. But please do not ever end date the SIP itself. I think that's coming up. No end dates, it messes up, and it's an EIS thing. I'm so sorry. We all wish it didn't do weird things like that, but it does.
So I'm going to jump in and give you some examples. There are some great questions in the chat, and hopefully we've grabbed some of them. One of the ones, the questions identified here. So we've got examples of non-residential SIPs. Took the narrative and broke it down. We suggest that as you get used to this process, as Donna said, you need to be thinking about how you answer each one of these little prompts. So I broke it down here to help you sort of see what it might look like. You'd put this sort of back together as one narrative. But met on 9/15 with Anne and her parents at the CS setting on Main Street in Belfast with the planning, discussed the past year and goals. So you'll see that Anne's name is there, described people she's comfortable with. She described how she communicates, how she likes to get her information, both verbally, have it reviewed. She also uses things like an iPhone, email, and text messages. So again, we want you to be thinking about how do people communicate both with you and with others so that as we work together to implement services. The first prompt is around strengthening community involvement. And so again, these are required HCBS. So everything that you're now seeing in the SIP is part of the home and community-based settings rule Aligning the person-centered plan with HCBS helps providers to come into compliance. You'll have evidence of daily documentation going forward if you follow the service implementation plan. So in this case, the DSP is going to encourage and support Ann to get out and explore. We'll talk about some of these things. They're going to assist her with budgeting and plan for activities, continue to accompany her to the library. So again, you're starting to see that it's not a lot of information, but there's enough information there. Next slide, Miranda. Continued narrative. Again, these are all the prompts for the narrative. I've broken them out so you can see how we answer each one. We expect that each part of that prompt is answered. So if it takes you taking it out and putting it in a Word document and really working through this, then feel free to do that. As you put it back into EIS, it's one narrative. The DSP will support Ann to maintain relationships, invite others to be involved in her life. By how? By joining for activities or meetings up at community events. The DSP will support her to plan activities she can do with her sister and her nephew to strengthen that connection, and enjoy celebrating holidays with her family, especially birthdays. She'll be supported, purchase cards. She also wants to learn how to make cards, and she continues to learn how to be a good aunt, a sister, and a friend. So those are things that we're working, helping her to expand her relationships. Number 3, explore, seek, obtain, or maintain or advance in competitive integrated employment. Again, all settings have to provide support around this. Ann has restarted her job. This is community supports, but they know enough, right? They know she's working. She's working at Bella Books and Cafe, 12 hours a week. Her schedule is Mondays and Fridays from 9 to 3. So she gets community support on the opposite days. Good to know, right? Because we ask you as a community support provider to support somebody's work schedule. Help people to know what their schedule at work is, help to inform people about, other things that they can do on the opposite days. So DSPs will monitor and check with Ann regularly to ensure that her schedule is accommodating her work schedule, right? They'll continue to provide opportunities to explore other employment if she wants it to help her. She'll be supported to build and maintain the skills needed in order to keep her employment, including becoming more comfortable with new people by practicing conversations. So day programs thinking about how do we help Ann to keep her job? How do we support her to be a good worker? We help her with social skills. We help her to just strengthen her own personal skills, interpersonal skills, because those transfer into the job. Next slide, Miranda. Additionally, within the narrative, there's a part if Ann was retired, and then it jumps into how does we increase and help her maintain control of her personal resources, right? They're going to assist her with budgeting and spending. So you'll see that here. How do we access transportation? These are all part of HCBS requirements. We've now built them into the SIP for you to take your policies, then meet with people, look at their PCP, and individualize it into a service implementation plan. So the DSP will accompany Ann in the community, provide transportation as needed, You can see these, you'll get these examples. We're going to talk about a good SIP in a second. Next slide. Again, goal implementation strategy is that next drop down. You're going to see that we grabbed this goal. This was a question. How do you develop the goal? You don't. So this is a goal that came out of the PCP. We grabbed it off the PCP. It should tell you what number, but it doesn't. Her goal was to maintain connections with friends and spend time in the community. So again, how are services going to help her to meet that goal? The whole list of what's going to happen and what staff are going to do based on conversations with Ann, based on information. Somebody asked about accessing the BMS 99. We actually hope that you ask to access any discovery tools that the case manager may have done, relationship maps, capacity surveys, community maps, other things beyond the BMS 99. We ask that you start doing discovery with people along with the case manager. So not just thinking about, what are somebody's deficits or what is showing up in the BMS 99. Beyond that, you now have a responsibility to work with the case manager to ask about, so what discovery did you do? Do you have a relationship map? Do you have any community maps? Can we do community mapping? Can we go out and figure out what's in a community that Ann might be interested in? So next slide, Miranda. Again, going on with the implementation strategy. These aren't long. Don't have a lot of characters. We give you more characters than you probably need, but services described will be provided for a total of 8 hours per week. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, Anne's offered support in deciding her schedule and activities based on her identified goals, what she has chosen to pursue. DSPs ensure they review it with her regularly to provide the chance to change her plans based on events, activities, and interests. They'll monitor for skills needed. Habilitation. Community supports is a habilitation service. It means that we are teaching people the skills they need. So let's focus in on what are staff teaching? How are they teaching? How do we use community as a place to teach? So Anne'd like to work on her goal in the following settings or places in the community. We're going to tell you that we want to see names of places. We want you to know where people are spending time. So again, Anne has several people she identifies as people she enjoys with at the program. She spends time there too, but she's also in the community. Again, example of a strong SIP. So as we talk about service implementation plans, our expectations, somebody asked how do they get approved? Well, they need to speak about the person. They need to use the person's name and person first language. If we see things like he, her, he, them, their, whatever, we know that maybe the name wasn't part of planning. So we ask that you use people's real names as part of the SIP. So let's see these individualized, they're about the person. That they identify people's individual interests, skills, abilities, and desires. This is not a generic community support SIP. This is a SIP that is about the person. So nobody's interests, skills, abilities, or desires are the same. So you would see every SIP for your community support program being different. It identifies what staff will do. And again, what does it look like? Explain it in plain language. It identifies real places in real towns. We can't say this enough. Our expectations are that if people are spending time in community, what community? In this case for her, it was Belfast and Montville. Tell us where the places are. What are the names of the places? The Belfast Library, the Belfast Bookstore and Cafe, the Knitting in Maine group. What are the places? Just saying that somebody's going to a store is not enough. Just saying somebody's going into community is not enough. What community, what towns, what places are people spending time? We also ask you to identify real people. So people will say like spending time with friends. What friends? You as an agency provider should know, and we expect that that's in the SIP. So my sister Susan, my brother John, my DSP Mark, whoever that is, again, first names are fine, but know who are in people's life. That's part of relationship mapping. Next slide. So we also have work support and employment specialist SIPs for you to review. And similar to community supports, these are specific to those services. So we're not going to go through those, but they're available here. So it talks about what our expectations are for work supports and employment specialists. We also have an example of, well, I'll go to this. In a strong work support, sorry, Miranda, can you go back? In a strong work support SIP, we will tell you, we want to see the name of the business, the address of the town, the job details, the days, the hours, the schedules, the duties. Be clear about the role of the work support staff. Are they maintaining employment? How are they doing that? Are they increasing productivity? How? And what will the work support staff be doing? If they're supporting personal hygiene and care, what will that be? If know the use of technology, put that in the SIP. What do they use? What do they have access to? Phone, apps, computers to keep themselves organized at work. Know the natural supports on the job. We want you to know who the supervisor is, who they go to when there's an issue, and we want it in the SIP. Identified by at least the first name and a role. So Ken, the manager of the Circle K, or Susan is the HR person. Remember, this is for the person. And so we want this readable, understandable, clear. And so sometimes, Miranda, can you, next slide? We have the opportunity to just think about like, does this make sense? Do you know who to go to? You know, you go to your HR person, her name's Susan. And then we all sort of know that as we support people. So under non-residential, again, career planning, employment specialist, community membership are other types of services. And we have some examples here that we're not going to get to today. So we have an example of a career planning narrative. And then what we want you to know overall for all SIPs is, first and foremost, if you are creating a service implementation plan as a provider, we ask you to know the definition of the service in main care. Go back to the main care manual. If you or your staff are new, or you haven't reviewed the main care manual service definition, know what the definition is for community supports. Know what the definition is for employment services. Know what the definition is for career planning or community membership. That's where we start in terms of what we can implement. Think about what your staff will do. Ask the question, what will it look like if I were to watch my staff? What would they be doing with people? And just having a conversation with a person isn't enough, right? Actionable things, doing things together. We say sometimes in career planning, getting your hands dirty, doing something. Use places, names, be clear and be concise in your writing. Always use person-centered language. Read it out loud with the person. Check in. Does this make sense? Does this sound okay? Do you know what we're going to be doing? Those sorts of questions help to ensure that the SIPs are helpful as we implement services. So again, I'll just wrap up. The SIP is to help the member choose services and locations. It reflects what the provider so it's so important that the provider reads the person-centered plan. Somebody again asked about the PCP. The PCP is always there for you to read. You won't be able to add to the PCP. So you can't change the PCP, you can't change a goal, you won't be able to do that, but you have all that information. And the member can use that. It's also part of your compliance ongoing and the setting for HCBS requirements. We have aligned the person-centered plan with all of the HCBS rules, with all of the prompts and all of the evidence that you're going to need to continue to submit ongoing to continue to remain in compliance as we move forward past March of 2023 even. Next slide. Donna, you want to jump in?
So again, wrapping up, make sure you're getting to know the person, know their preferences, know their strengths, know their interests or skills, know what they want, what goals they want to work on, and then what staff are going to do to make that happen or to assist the person to make that happen. Make sure you're meeting those HCBS standards and all of the services. The service planning, as we've said, it's an evolving process. It's ongoing. It's a continuous thing. It's not something, it's not one meeting, write it all up and you're done. It's all about the SIP, how it's going to work, the documentation, and then the review and adjustments as needed. A SIP is a team effort. It's not just about you and as the provider. It also is the person you're supporting, their case manager, care coordinator, and who else is on their support team. And for all of us, practice doesn't make us perfect, but it sure does help us improve our writing our narratives. A couple things from the FAQ, which we'll talk about some other FAQs in a minute. So the SIP is attached to the PCP and it should be reviewed or approved prior to the approval dates being entered into it. Yes, you're going to need to do a new SIP if there's change in location so that it's clear that the member agrees to the move and the new location. Not every service has to have a goal. But you're going to at least address how you're supporting members' health functions, health, safety, and functional needs. The goal title doesn't match the wording in the PCP. There's technical issues around the SIP. There's some things, Miranda, we have this posted, I believe, right? With a whole line of facts. Okay. So these are some of the common ones that we've had. Again, don't end date the SIP, please. You can put a date of entry, but not an end date.
Last but not least, back to me to wrap this up. As our last piece, we would like to launch a little poll to help us determine our next steps for training. So this poll should be popping up for you. If OATS were to offer ongoing person-centered planning / SIP technical assistance training, what frequency would you be interested in? We have options for monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly, and not interested. This will be very helpful to us as we determine next steps, as well as the manpower we have to support the need that's out there. As I mentioned, we're trying to ensure that the training opportunities we put out there are actually what folks want, and we're not just blindly trying to throw darts at the dartboard, hoping that it's helpful. We've got more than 70% participated. That's great. Thank you to those of you who answered the question. I am going to close that poll just for time. If you have any other comments or questions about ongoing technical assistance, please feel free to reach out. And as a reminder, on the Person-Centered Planning webpage that I popped into the chat, we do have resources such as the full Maine's Person-Centered Planning Process Instruction Guide that walks through the steps that case managers follow. There's a section in there about the SIP. There are the person-centered thinking tools. We also have a frequently asked questions document that includes questions that have been received about the SIP as well, and a section specific to provider training. So previous trainings that have been held, the Service Implementation Plan Form PDF, those are all available to you. And we have had questions about technical assistance and step-by-step. There is a step-by-step document right on that page on how to add the SIP in processes. And I was sent one for assessments earlier today. So I'm going to check and see when that will be posted on the website as well. So thank you very much for attending today. I'm going to pop this email address into the chat box. Fortunately, I neglected to do that earlier. Please feel to reach out anytime you have questions or feedback about the process, you're having issues in EIS, that mailbox is monitored. So thank you to Lisa and Donna today for your presentation. This was wonderful. Were there any Q&A questions that either of you wanted to address live?
I think, as people know that this is a new process, and we have been doing trainings for the last 60 or 90 days, both with case managers, providers last month. And this is only the second month of providing training. If you missed last month's training, you may have to go back and watch that video. We don't expect you to learn how to do this on your own. If you really do need technical assistance, if you're getting hung up, you need to send us an email. For non-residential services, it can all come through the email box, as Miranda said, and we will help you. We're definitely resource coordinators, Donna, myself. There are plenty of us around to help you walk through a SIP if you really need that level of support. But again, we've been doing trainings. If you missed those other ones, all I can say is try to go back and look at watch that training, and then maybe watch this one again. We are more than willing. Case managers can help, but it is reach out to us also through the PCP mailbox.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you everyone for attending today. Hope you have a great rest of your day. It was raining here and now it's sunny. I'm not sure what's happening. So fall is upon us. I am going to end the webinar here. I have quite a few questions about the slides. Those will be distributed and posted if you're still on the call here. So thank you very much, everyone.